it's Catherine from CatherinePooler.com. I am doing a take two video today. I really almost never do this, but I made a video for you yesterday and I really love how the card turned out, but I must have been a little bit tired because I felt like the video was a little boring. So I'm gonna do it again, and here is the card that I made. I love it, and as long as I'm making another one, I may as well tweak it up a little bit, right? So I'm gonna take the same supplies, same basic idea, but do it maybe a tiny bit different. Let's see what we come up with. My favorite part of this card is the holly leaves. I think they came out absolutely gorgeous. They're very easy to do, so let me show you how. This is a penny black die, and I cut it out using watercolor paper. I'm going to use Festive Berries and the Fired Brick Distress ink. You can use a regular paintbrush or a water brush like this. This is an Aqua Painter by Stampin' Up. Ranger also carries them. I'm sure other companies do too. You fill up the barrel with water and it's awesome. I'm going to paint the berries, get them wet, and then add my color. And you see how the water does the work for you. It just moves that color around. Make sure you get the sides also, because you don't want to have white edges. Oh, I forgot to paint that first, but that's all right. We'll just wet these down, adding on some color. I'm going to squeeze the barrel. I want to get a little more water out there. I'm going to clean off my tip a little bit, because now I want to go in with the darker color. And when you add that, you can see that water, it's going to wick that color around and make a really fun shaded red berry. You would see this a little, you would see this working a little bit more if the colors were further apart in shade. So when we work on the greens, you'll see that a little more. All right, now I want to let those dry. Now that they've dried, these little berries are not dark enough for me. So I'm going back in and I'm just wetting part of the berry and I'm adding some more fired brick. And then I'm grabbing a little bit of vintage photo and adding that on there too. And that will help give me a little more shading to the berries and also darken them up a bit. And this one has too much water on it. The more wet your berries are, or whatever it is that you're watercoloring, the lighter they're going to be. So I'm going to let this berry dry a little more again and then add some more color. The next step is the leaves, and I dried the berries in between because if I didn't, then the green would just run right into that red. So I don't want that to happen. So drying them in between prevents that. I'm just adding peeled paint. And I'm going with less water on this because I want it to be darker. And then I'm going to add in mowed lawn. And even though this is not quite as wet, you can see that color is still moving. Oh, that looks awesome. All right, we'll go on to leaf 2. Pick up that peeled paint. Make sure you get the edges. Hopefully I'll remember to get all of the edges so we don't have white edges. And then mowed lawn. That looks awesome. Before I move on to all the rest of the leaves, I wanted to add some gold. So I have this Delicata ink pad. I've actually been using it a ton. And I'm going to add that into the leaf. It's going to add a really beautiful shimmer. You can add it all over or just kind of in the center or on the tips or whatever floats your boat. I kind of removed a little color in there, so I'm going to add back a little bit more of that mowed lawn. And I'm going to proceed and do the rest of the leaves just like that. The last little bit I have to do is the stem here, so I'm using vintage photo. Now, you do not have to use distress ink pads for this. You can use Inktense colored pencils. You can use Copic markers. You can use regular ink pads. Whatever you have on hand is probably going to work just fine. The last step before I move on to the card part is adding some crystal effects to the berries. This is a Stampin' Up! Product, so of course you can get it there. Ranger makes glossy accents, Same thing. You can also use this as a glue, or any glitter or stickles, or maybe even the Wink of Stella pen will work, just to add some fun interest to your berries. Imagine Crafts also has the Pico embellisher, so if you have the clear one, you could do the same thing. So we'll set that aside. It'll take a while to dry, and it'll give us time to work on the next part. Now the next part of the card is this background, and I used a color wash, and I used regular paper, and the paper got really warped, and I remedied that by adding a lot of adhesive and putting it under some books, and it did flatten out. But I wanted to use watercolor paper this time to see the difference, so we can see. I know there would be a little difference, but we'll see exactly what the difference looks like when I'm done. I have masking paper by Ink-A-Dink-A-Doo, and I'm going to rub it down pretty good. When I add all this water, it's going to start peeling up, so rubbing it down is going to help with that. A little bit. And I'm going to use a little Broken China and a little Salty Ocean. I'm going to add quite a bit of water to this. Move this aside so we don't get it wet. And then we just start dipping. If you want, you can let it dry on its own, or you can hit it with a heat tool. I wanted a really soft, subtle blue background color, kind of sky-like. One thing that I get with the watercolor paper that I don't get with regular paper is these little, what I call crusty edges, which I really love. I love that look. I think it's gorgeous and beautiful. Now once that's pretty dry, if you want to keep adding, you can. So we'll just dip some more and keep drying it. I think I'll do it one more time. We'll just keep continuing to dry it. On this background, I added some stenciling on the back. I'm using a Wendy Vecchi Dots and Stripes border. So we'll just add this on top, grab my Salty Ocean ink pad, and we'll just sponge straight on top of the stencil. Then we'll pull this mask off, and we have a really cool label shape right in the center. And I got some leaking underneath that paper because when, obviously, you saw when this paper got wet, it curled up and it kind of came unstuck. I'm fine with that. If that bugs you, well, maybe don't add so much water. I don't know, but I really love how this label looks. Obviously, one thing I'm changing is the size of this layer. I have a gold piece behind, and the way I made that was to take the Delicata ink pad and just run it over your cardstock to color it. Normally, I would do silver with light blue like this, but I think the light blue with the hollies and the gold on the leaves on the holly just look beautiful. I'm going to emboss the greeting in gold, so first I'm going to use this deactivator tool. This removes any static or stickiness or anything that may have gotten on your cardstock, and because if you don't remove it, then the embossing powder will stick to places that you don't want it. So I'm stamping this in Versamark, and then we'll add the gold embossing powder. Just going to use a little sheet of cardstock to catch that excess. We'll be able to easily funnel that back in. All right, we'll heat this greeting. For some reason, when I stamped this, there was like a little line right across, so it didn't get fully stamped. Surprisingly, I'm able to use my gold Wink of Luna pen to fill that in. Oh, that's working great. So the regular cardstock and the watercolor cardstock, this came out lighter, but I think it's because I added more water. This watercolor piece was still pretty warpy. I think this one was maybe a little bit more warpy, but this one you can see more watermarks on it. So it depends on what look you like. They're pretty similar, This has texture to it also that this doesn't. Another difference is you kind of got a little bit of a bubbling of the cardstock here, which added its own texture. So, I don't know, it's whatever you prefer. I think maybe the watercolor paper looks a little bit more fancy. One more thing I did was use this basically as a stencil. Now this is a very, very subtle detail that I'm adding to this card, but I'm using this as a stencil and then just adding some shimmer with my Wink of Stella pen. And really on the final project, you can barely see this, so it's a completely optional step. I also tried the gold Wink of Luna, and I just didn't really like it. It was just too stark for me. I thought maybe if I also add a tiny touch of this Salty Ocean, it just gives a little shading, a little subtle backdrop for this really cool accent piece. So I'm just going to add a little liquid glue on here, a few sequins. Same exact supplies, same techniques, different looking cards. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video tutorial, and if you're looking for more masking samples, be sure to check out Stamp Nation because it's our challenge this week. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe and give me a thumbs up if you think you'll try some of the techniques that I showed you here. Have a great day. Is masking, so blah, 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 blah. And you'll get some, well, I need to go refill it, hold on.